So this week, apparently, Loki is a buddy cop show, and Loki and Mobius are working together to save the day and then ride off into the sunset aboard a sweet jet ski, salads in hand. Welcome to the MCU Pod, a companion podcast to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'm your host, Grant Davis. Alongside me is my co-host, Mike Garcia.
Hey, what's up, Grant? I'm back. I think it's going to be a tradition that I miss like either every series premiere or every series finale.
No, man.
And then like a few episodes in between, I think.
We need your thoughts. We value your thoughts. You need to get on here.
I appreciate that. Looks like we got somebody else jumping in.
We do have a lurker. Boom! Look at that. We have two guests with us. First up, you know this guy right down here. It's Will Cardini, Indie Comics darling.
Hey everybody.
Hey,
glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us again. And we're also joined by our buddy and fellow co-host of Star Trek Discovery Pod, Mr. Clyde Haynes.
Live long and prosper. Oh wait, wrong pod.
Yeah. We say MCU later.
We say hot quake, my friend.
All right.
Yeah, we do say hot quakes as well. Oh, did you just say hot quakes? We don't do that segment anymore. Wait a second.
Wait. So for the MCU pod, you guys have that, and then on Star Trek we have a shirtless Riker.
Uh-huh.
I feel nope. You got to change that
hot
up.
Quakes.
The hot quakes is much hotter than the hot freaks.
we got themes though. Before we go ahead and get into everything, we of course are going to be talking about episode 2 tonight of Loki. I think it's only 6 episodes in the season.
Oh no!
And it's okay because these are long episodes.
They are nice and long. Yeah. I can't complain there. If they want to take this very British route and only give us 6 episodes, at least make them long, make them chunky. Before we jump into all that, if you guys are watching us live, we do a live podcast every Friday, tentatively, every Friday at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time over on youtube.com/MCU Pod. But we did want to say that since Loki has moved their schedule to being on Wednesdays, we might just go ahead and move next week's show to be also Wednesday night. I hope that doesn't lose us all of our listeners. I hope that some of you guys can still kind of stick around, and if you can't, you can always just check out the video later.
We'll have fresher hot quakes.
Yeah, we want to be able to have that discussion right after being able to see the episode. So try and tune in next week at Wednesday at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time here at youtube.com/MCU Pod. And if you're here and you've never done this yet, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right there at the bottom. It only takes you a little second. You can also hit that little bell icon. That's a notification. So anytime we go live, you're alerted. We usually just do this once a week, but sometimes I'll do a little side episode here or there when I have crazy theories I got to get out of my brain and make everyone go, what the hell are you talking about? Other things you guys can do to help support this podcast, you can rate and review us over on Apple. Give us that 5-star rating, write a little review. That helps us out and gains us a little bit of visibility. You can also support this podcast over at patreon.com/MCU Pod. There you can make a per month donation. So, not too much breaking the bank, but we have plenty of tiers for what group, Marvel group you want to join. So if you want to be a West Coast Avenger, I think it's $1 a month. If you want to be a Revenger, $2 a month. Fantastic Four, $4 a month. I don't remember what the other ones are. I think there's the Avengers and there's I don't remember what they are. You can go check them out. We appreciate all the support. Patreon.com/MCU Pod. I think that's it. Let's go ahead and just dive into this episode. This week's episode is called The Variant. It is the second episode, and once again directed by Kate Herron. The episode synopsis for this is: Mobius puts Loki to work, but not everyone at TVA is thrilled about the God of Mischief's presence. I love IMDb's boring fucking write-ups. Every week we like to do a little segment we call Snap Judgments. Go ahead and start things off with Clyde. Clyde, you weren't here last week. In fact, all three of you weren't here last week to talk about Loki's first episode as well. So give me your impression of both this week's episode and last week's of Loki overall.
I like it. I didn't think I was gonna like it when I think about the fact that this isn't a character when I watch Avengers that I'm like, okay, well, where's the Loki moment? I wasn't quite sure how I was going to feel about it, but it's got this buddy cop kind of feel to it, and so it's fun. In all Marvel stuff, you want to see a few more powers, but it's still kind of working for me. I was reading a Black Panther anthology recently, and they talk about how when the movies come out, you have all this literature that comes around that focuses on the things that go on around the movie and the other characters, and I'm feeling like I'm getting some of this, right? You've got this incredible actor, and now I'm getting this deep dive into his perspective and what happens around the Avengers and after the Avengers movies. That this was actually pretty interesting. So far I'm kind of hooked. I thought this episode was interesting, and like everything else so far in the Disney Marvel TV format, it ends and I'm like, I felt like I needed 10 more minutes.
All right. Will, you want to go ahead and jump in, give us your snap judgment?
Sure. So this is probably my favorite of the Marvel, definitely my favorite of the Marvel TV shows, and up there in terms of the movies. I love weird sci-fi stuff. I love time travel. I love thinking about convoluted time loops and Primer, movies like that. And then I also really like the aesthetic of the TVA because it reminds me of Brazil, which is a really great Terry Gilliam movie about like a dystopian bureaucratic future. And I love that they're playing off that vibe.
All right. Mike, what
Yeah,
do you think?
I'm digging this show a lot. We're still pretty early in the season, episode 2, but I've always been a huge fan of the Loki character in the MCU, because he's not only is Tom Hiddleston super charming as the character, but Loki is the most tricksy and the most trolly character. And there are whole plot lines where you don't know what he's going to do, and then the little things he does to trick the characters on screen take the movie in a completely different direction. And I think this show has that spirit. I think this show is being tricksy and trolly with us, and I think we're going to watch the entire season and have to go back and watch it from the beginning because there's going to be tons of stuff. And I know you can do this with a lot of Marvel stuff, but there's going to be tons of stuff we didn't catch that was right in front of our faces where we thought it was going right, but it went left. And I appreciate that because not only is it doing that, but it's also honoring the Loki spirit where Loki is just fun and entertaining. So it's not just resting its laurels on that. But with this episode, we'll get into a couple of my theories, but with this episode, I think the writers and the show creators are really honoring that tricksy Loki spirit by putting some stuff in the text that is very I don't know, I want to say just kind of meta and pretty wild, but we'll get into it.
I think that's a good call. You said something similar about WandaVision. I think you're also dead on about like how rewarding the rewatches, especially in the context of knowing later on what's going on with her, what's going on with that world she's constructing, and why certain elements are in place, especially like looking back at all the actions that like Agnes is taking throughout the series.
Right.
And yeah, there's something definitely more sinister going on behind the scenes of this kind of 1960s-esque boring corporate TVA office life. I mean, I'm definitely watching this and going, there is something rotten in this, and it It also kind of reminds me of oh man, what was that movie? What's the horror movie that had Thor in it? And they're in the Cabin in the Woods. It's called Cabin
in the Woods. Yeah.
But all of the corporate stuff that's going on with the other guys, it reminds me a little bit of that, where they're just kind of jokey and playing around, but something evil is going on, and it feels like Owen Wilson might kind of know about it, or
it feels like there's definitely like maybe the Owen Wilson character, or there's someone else in the show that knows a lot more than they're letting on, and that is pulling some strings that we don't necessarily have confirmation yet. But another part of the fun, tricksy meta thing this show is doing, like in this episode, which I thought was really good, there's the whole kind of explanation of the timekeepers, and Loki's like, what the hell are they doing? Where are they? And it's, well, the timekeepers are really busy because while we're here and we're resolving different time strands and uniting the timeline and making the timeline, cleaning the timeline, what they're doing is they're at the end of it and they're pulling in all the different threads and they're trying to figure out how to end it. And is that not an explanation of a writer's room that is in crisis, trying to come up with an ending that the fans and the critics and everyone else watching a show won't go, they kind of didn't stick the landing, so this show's so-so. Because that's kind of what we've all been doing with the last few Marvel TV shows. And it's kind of what us as critics and fans have been doing for like great TV shows for forever.
Mike, what are you talking about? Marvel fans never criticize the end of shows, like ever.
I like to direct you to episode 10 of this podcast, my friend.
I did want to hit on a few of the snap judgments of you, the viewing audience. Will Morris says, IMDb's write-up wasn't the only thing boring about this episode. And whoa, dude, we said snap judgments, not hot quakes. So good. But that's a little feisty there, Will.
I get it. There was some times here where, like, it seemed like there was a lot of there was some repilot stuff here, right? At the beginning, Loki's like learning about the Time Authority again.
There's more exposition.
There's more exposition, so we can learn about it. Although it's fun because it's Tom Hiddleston and he's trying to assault a cartoon character. That's fun to watch, but it's also like, oh, it's exposition. Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate it because there's a lot of shows that don't ever try to tackle something as heady as this. Yeah. And this is going to be complex, and we're trying to thread that needle of appeasing people that can just take crazy timeline stuff and run with it, and another audience who's like, I'm gonna need you to hold my hand a little bit through this because this is crazy.
I thought it was interesting when you compare it to WandaVision, right? So in WandaVision, the first few episodes, you're like, if you're not deep into kind of the comic book lore, you're looking and going, I don't understand what the hell's going on. Like, I'm
even if you are deep into it, you're like, what is happening?
So this is a different take where they come in and they go, we're going to hold your hands a little bit and we're going to try and explain it to you. They're going to come back and explain it to you again, and so that you can kind of follow along as the timeline blows up and you understand why that's important. So right. I kind of sort of appreciated it, but it did kind of get started a little slow.
Nicole Jackson says, it's not my favorite so far, but it's good entertainment. Lone says, I don't think the fight scenes are that well done, and the female Loki reveal was pretty underwhelming. Kern says, love the Loki Mobius relationship. I did have high expectations for Owen Wilson, but I've been pleasantly surprised. Can't wait to see the next episode and see what Lady Loki has done. Yeah, I mean, let's go ahead and start there. We're going to start at the end. We get a reveal that, at least on this show, we were already speculating about this last week. Last week, in the pilot episode, there's the scene where they're showing the file for Loki, and gender is listed as fluid. It's known that Loki is not only a shapeshifter, they changed gender as I guess they want within their own universe, or there's multiple versions of Loki, and we even see that kind of that cool scene with the little holograph where they're flipping through different versions of the Loki, and you see the big old muscle bound one, and like these kind of weird different alt versions of Loki. What did you guys feel about the reveal? Mike, what did you think?
I think I've seen the actor before. Remind me who the actor is. I
I don't have it pulled up, but yeah.
Okay, cool. I've seen her before in something, I don't know, but she seems to be able to in the little reveal that we got of her in this episode. She seems she can go toe to toe with Tom Hiddleston really well. She has that presence, right? So I think in terms of like setting up something that is going to make me anticipate Lady Loki's return, that worked. And I'm kind of confused about like how the variant thing works. You know, like what happened in one timeline that made, you know, Loki present as female and not male? Is it just regular Tom Hiddleston Loki projecting himself in female form, or did Odin find Loki as a ice baby or whatever he was and decide I'm going to create a daughter instead? Like,
So-
what do you guys think about that?
I don't think it's like multiple universes. It's not like a multiverse, and these are variants from different multiverses. It's our timeline, and then there's like little branches that go off and are different, right? So maybe this Loki can change. Is a shapeshifter. Loki can turn into a woman. Loki can turn into a female horse. Loki can turn into a monster. So this Loki was a woman, and something happened to where she did something that she wasn't supposed to do, right? And then they tried to get her, and she escaped. That's my take on it, at least.
My understanding, and I'm not as familiar with the comic itself, but the comics versions, but I believe that there is a version in the story from Ragnarok, and correct me in the comments if any of you are more familiar with this, where there is a character named Sylvie, who is a human that somehow ends up getting Asgardian powers, and essentially kind of becomes this new version of Loki, a female Loki. And so some people are speculating that this might not be a female version of Loki along the timeline so much as it's this other person who also possesses a lot of the same powers and characteristics.
Oh, so it's a Loki, but not our Loki in a different version. It's somebody who, like a copycat killer Loki.
Kind of. It could be that, or it could be this is just a different version of Loki who decides to present themselves.
Yeah. It's Sophia DiMartino is the actor, and she was in that movie Yesterday, where the guy invents all the Beatles songs.
Mhm.
But,
I'm going to say that I'm going with the idea that this is not Loki, but it's kind of a Loki. I don't know. It's in part just a gut feeling, but there was just something that one felt a little bit different, unique as they interacted, but also the let me fight myself just seems a little tired, right? The idea that I'm fighting my mirrorverse self, just, I mean, you know, for those of us who do a Star Trek Discovery pod, I'm exhausted with that concept at the moment. So I'm hoping for something slightly more unique. And I think that would be more fun, more engaging. So I'm kind of going with this is slightly different than just a reincarnation of Loki in a different form.
The characters meeting different versions of themselves and fighting themselves is something we've seen a lot just in the MCU over the past decade, right?
Mm-hmm. We just saw it with Vision, right? We literally just saw it with Vision.
We just saw it with Vision. We saw it in Endgame with Cap meets his previous self. We saw it. These are just a few examples. We saw it in. Sorry, my rabbit is trying to chew my cord. Okay, we saw it in. Even if
is that what you call it, Mike?
Yeah. Sorry. In another way, we saw it with Black Panther, because at the end of Black Panther, we had two guys in Black Panther suits who were kind of the same but opposites finding each other. So you see that a lot in the MCU. But that being said, I'm not tired of it. I think it's a cool concept.
Well, we do see there's other things that are distinguishing this quote unquote Loki from our Loki. She seems to have this ability that kind of reminds me of the movie like It Follows or Fallen, where she can kind of tap and possess other people to control them. We saw Loki do this to an extent when he had the staff in Avengers. He could control Hawkeye, but he couldn't do it himself. This Loki seems to have other powers, also other motivations and concerns, and she almost like she seems to look down at the cheapness and childishness of Loki's ambition to instead of take over Asgard, it's now just switched to I'm going to take over the TVA, and she's like, oh, you're going to try and take over the TVA, and he's like, what? No, I'm not. But that's like 100%. That's as much as he thought. And in a way, it's kind of endearing that our Loki still just kind of has these predictable ambitions, I guess.
Yeah, the constant like undercutting of Loki's like nefarious ambitions is a good through line in this show. It's like at the beginning when he's like, I'll rule everything, and Mobius is like, why? Makes him double think that, and Mobius makes so much sense, which makes me right there. That's when I started thinking, oh, so Mobius is Loki.
We're getting some cool comments from over here. Takako says Nerdist pointed out that one of the translation credits called her Sylvie, not the variant. Angeli Bourgeois says the line where Loki says something like, I wouldn't treat myself like this, makes me think she isn't a Loki variant. Will says Sylvie might make her the Enchantress. And Tim says, I think the core power she uses kind of supports that idea of being Enchantress. So interesting that, yeah, we're not really sure. In fact, it makes it a little bit more curious why Mobius would have been so confident that this is a Loki. Is it the horns, or is she calling herself Loki? And they already knew this.
I'm not going to let go how you just kind of swept right past me saying, "Oh yeah, Mobius is Loki."
You still think Mobius is Loki?
Yeah, of course.
Another variant.
Do you think all of them that we've seen are all Lokis? Everyone in the TVA?
No.
Why
no,
do you
but I think it would just make some great emotional sense for Mobius to be Loki. Mobius to somehow be Loki, who ended up in the TVA, tried to take it over, decided I'm going to work here, became an older guy, changed his appearance to look more in line with the TVA, and then is chasing this other version of himself who is a copycat, and knows that, okay, the only person I can really trust is the me that came into the TVA when I was younger. So he goes back in time, fishes our Loki, our Tom Hiddleston Loki, out of the TVA into his version of the TVA. Sorry, follow me. And then he just uses him to help him catch this variant Loki. And it's going to be amazing when our Tom Hiddleston Loki finds out that that's actually him and that's his future. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to happen.
I love this. I love this theory. I think it's great. It seems like they're leaning more towards like the TVA all being a hoax, though, right? I mean, that's the other big thing that I think like they spend so much time like establishing these rules about it, right? And then maybe that's because they want to overturn them later. And if you like really understand it, that'll like be more meaningful. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if they would do like the two. I feel like it'd be one or the other, right? You know what I mean?
I'm with Will. I think, Mike, your conspiracy theory is deep in the well, but actually in some sense kind of brilliant.
I look for the emotional payoff, and I think if I'm invested in Loki, like that would be such an emotional payoff. I don't know about all the other stuff, but
but that being said, I'm gonna take the easy route and go with Will. I think simplicity for sake. It really is. It's kind of a hoax. This whole timekeepers, time masters things is kind of weird, kind of a hoax, and it's going to unravel at the end.
But would a place in space and time that is a hoax be able to use the stones as paperweights?
Yes.
Mhm.
I mean, I was already touching on what I think this place is
Mhm.
last week, in that we are in a realm that exists in the Quantumverse, which we're going to probably explore more in the third Ant-Man movie, Quantumania. We saw a glimpse of this when Ant-Man got trapped in the Quantumverse, and he and Michelle Pfeiffer's character, they saw that little kind of bubble land, and I think that bubble land is actually where the TVA is. I think that we're going to see King the Conqueror is one of the quote unquote timekeepers who has taken and controlled and created this little pocket universe of people trapped in the quantumverse, that he's making them, for his own purposes, cut off and control certain timelines, which allows him to stop other branches, which allows him to somehow hold and maintain more power over the timelines that he does control.
Mhm.
If there's less branching ones, there's less that he has to go out and also conquer. So the TVA is doing more work for him of minimizing additional realms he'd have to go and pull into his control.
But you're making, I think what we've seen from the past two shows, if we're going to pull from that, you're making a mistake, because you're thinking a big part of this show is going to feed in to the movies and the rest of the Marvel universe in a big way and set stuff up. And we've seen none of that is really true with these smaller shows in terms of like theory ideas, right?
No, because all of a sudden this is going to make the X-Men happen. No, I don't know. I'm not going to also go that way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible it's wrong, but I do think that it seemed that Ant-Man, when he was in the quantum space, he was protected from the ramifications of the Infinity Stones. They don't work on that level. So if they're taking those stones and they're bringing it into the quantum realm, yeah, they also just don't work there, and that's why they're paperweights.
Right.
That's just a possibility. I'm not sure. Complete speculation there. The Chekhov's jet ski. Let's talk about that.
Can't you just wait to the final episode where Loki realizes that he is Morbius, and then he takes him to Lake Tahoe and gives him a jet ski and cries as Mobius just enjoys his life on the jet ski and then somehow dies. Like, it's going to be amazing.
It's going to be one of those scenes where they're on a boat and he has to kill Mobius, and like he's holding a gun to him and he's like, "Please, man, please let me at least just ride that jet ski right by the boat off into the sunset." And he's like, "Do it, man, do it, brother." He gets on the jet ski, and then Loki still holds that gun shaking and shoots him as he's riding off on the jet ski.
That comes right after they jump out of the airplane together. Yeah.
To me, I couldn't. It is all Point Break. I couldn't understand why, if they figured out that there's no variant energy if you go to a place that's doomed, wouldn't the very next thing you do was go and get on a jet ski? I mean, you now have a place where you can go and do whatever you want, like go nuts. Like, the very next thing I would have done was been like, we get some jet skis.
I mean, not a lot of waves in Pompeii, though.
I mean, not Pompeii, but like, I bet you there was some killer waves at the Rocks Cart. The hurricane.
Yeah. That's right. It was like a flood event. Yeah.
I mean, who puts a big box store right on the water?
I mean, they knew
seems
it
like a waste of great real estate to me.
No, they didn't put it on the water. What was happening was there was like insane tsunami floods, right?
It's a Category 8 hurricane.
And it was a Category 10 apocalyptic event.
Right.
Like, they said that I think they listed Ragnarok as a Category 7 or something. So whatever was going over at Roxcart was a Category 10. It was going to be like just much worse devastation.
That might just be because there's only like 20,000 people in Asgard, and on Earth there's like billions, you know?
Right. We we're introduced to this Loki, and we have to kind of remind ourselves that this Loki isn't the same Loki that we left with from the events of Ragnarok and the events of him sacrificing himself in the beginning of Endgame. This is a Loki that was a scumbag. He's evil. So the moments we're seeing where in the last episode he's choking up and he's emotional about his mother's death, and then him looking through the files this week and seeing the events of Ragnarok, which another quick little Easter egg. I think they even mentioned the Revengers in that file. But when he's reading about that, you can see how just seeing those events and the devastation of his homeland, what he sought to conquer, but he still loved. These moments are endearing, I think, at least to me, of seeing this kind of growth for Loki, to see that as much as he puts up this posturing, this exterior that he's a bad guy, and he rips people's eyes all the time. Let's not forget he's a bad guy. There's
dude.
softening that keeps happening here as the writers are taking that version of Loki and bringing him to the version of Loki that we kind of, at least for my part, loved and we're rooting for.
I agree. I think they did a really smart thing in the first episode where they kind of broke down Loki's psyche, and he admitted that all of that is posturing because he's weak, and you need to seem terrorizing and evil when you're weak so you can control stronger people. And he broke and I believed him. And if that's true, under that veneer, there's a good person there. And I think they set that up, and I think that's kind of why we're seeing a Loki in this episode, the second episode after that admission that, yeah, he's tricksy and he's clever and he's trying to get his own way, and he got away at the end here. But also in the end, he's probably going to do the right thing.
See, I'm not so sure. And the reason why I'm not so sure is because I'm trying to look at the long-term development of this character. And what do they want Loki to be in the next theoretical Avengers movie?
Sexy.
Right? Well, I mean, he's Tom Hiddleston, so that goes without saying. So the issue, though, is Loki's a bad guy. He's a villain, right? And so I wonder if they're lulling us into this false sense of security where we think, oh, wow, yes, he's cuddly and warm and he's going to do the right thing. But in the end, he's going to go back to being Loki and being the foil, the villain, the trickster, so that when we leave this MCU TV show verse, we're back on track with who he is in the cinematic movie kind of realm.
Maybe, but I think, what do you guys think? Is this Loki's endgame, this show, or is this setting up Loki to come back in the MCU verse in full?
He's been in a lot of stuff at this point. I mean, I don't know. I haven't read any meta commentary from Tom Hiddleston or anything, but I could definitely see him being sick of being Loki and, going out with his own TV miniseries like Blaze of Glory style.
Yeah. But also, why would you be sick of that? Having a great time, everybody loves you, you play a really fun character that chews the scenery, probably make millions of dollars. Seems like a dream gig too, right?
I mean it doesn't seem to be holding him back from other great roles. He seems to also do other little TV shows here or there and pick up some other great movies. And this is probably the most intensive element that he's had to do, but he gets his own kind of spotlight show, and it's only 6 episodes. It seems like a pretty decent gig, I would think.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you think about the Avengers movies in total, you've got a lot of stars on there, right? So Tom is not exactly the top of the call sheet, right? He's a little further down the call sheet, and in fact, when you think about it, he's probably on set fewer times than Robert Downey Jr., right? So I'm looking at this and going, this is probably a pretty decent gig for him. He shows up, he shoots a few scenes, he does some stuff, he has some fun. Like, I don't know the guy, so I could be way off, but also now he has his own show, right? I think this is a cool gig. I'd like to see more of it. And let me say, I actually enjoyed it, right? Like, it does feel like it's a bit more comedy, buddy cop, X-Files-ish kind of show. It's like if X-Files was a comedy with a little bit of it has magic. So if X-Files was a comedy, this is kind of what you get, and I kind of like it.
There's a great comment here from Rich Murphy. He says, I think that it might be a reinvention. Tom Hiddleston as Loki might be done. So this might be the swan song for Tom Hiddleston as Loki, but this may be a setup for Kid Loki, which does track with what we've been seeing from the other two shows thus far. We have the kids of Wanda and Vision, Speedster and Doctor Strange Jr., or whatever they are. I don't remember their names. And then we also have the one kid who in Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Oh, Isaiah Bradley's nephew.
Yeah, his or his grandson. I don't remember what. But he would also be a part of the Young Avengers. So it does seem like they're setting in place a lot of these characters. You're gonna have the protege in the new Hawkeye show coming up as well.
Right.
And Miss Marvel.
And Miss Marvel.
Right.
So yeah, they are setting in place a lot of them, and a Kid Loki could be an interesting idea if he takes this shape-shifting route that direction. I don't know.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, it's a whole new generation of reinvention of characters that we've come to know and love, but it gives it a whole new generation. That can be fun.
It makes perfect sense. They're doing the same with the Black Widow movie. They're introducing Natasha's sister, who's also a Black Widow, and I mean, it doesn't. People are calling this Kid Loki. Are we going to see Kid Loki show up? Probably, but he'll probably what Marvel is setting up more is like 20-something Loki, right?
It's also
40-something Tom Hiddleston.
It's also cheaper, man. Like, you got to think about it. At some point, what do you have to pay the A-team to be in this Marvel movie, right?
Yeah,
like,
it makes sense long term.
I mean, Scarlett Johansson alone, like, that's got to break the bank just a little bit. Robert Downey Jr., come on. Like, Chris Evans, I hate to say it, and hopefully he'll never listen to the show, but you pretty much made Chris Evans, right? And now you got to pay him.
Don't say that. He's a big fan of the show.
He's on the live chat right now. Actually.
Yeah.
Oh man. See, I was just joking. I was kidding.
We got a comment here from Chris Pratt. It says, Idlone says, the kids of Loki and female Loki, which I gotta say, that's a bit
too far, man.
You don't think Loki would take a chance to
too far
a girl version of himself? Come on. Of course he would 1,000 times.
Yeah, but the kids,
is this Game of Thrones?
That's just your DNA twice, man. I don't know. Moving on.
Please.
No, more on the kid Loki and female.
The relationship.
More baby Lokis.
We're moving on. We gotta move on. The relationship between Mobius and Loki in this episode, I think, it strengthens and it becomes a little bit more of a mutual respect, especially once they start working on the documents together and they're like going back and forth. There's a cute, if maybe a little bit overplayed sequence about the Asgardian salad.
Man.
But I think one of those things works. It works even better because of the fact that sure, Loki's making a point about the salad and using it as a metaphor, but he also distinctly knows he's fucking with Mobius when he's messing up his salad. And so it going a hair too long and then him just pouring juice on it is him being like, I'm trying to explain something to you, but I also want to mess with you.
And it's also the writers trolling us like, I know somebody out there is like, what does this salad mean?
Well, could Mobius get a bigger salad? I mean, that really was not lunch, man.
No,
I'm just saying, if you're gonna eat lunch, you're upset over a side salad. Right?
But yes, that's true. But you're right, Grant. Like the vibe between these two guys turning into more of a buddy cop thing is pretty infectious, and these two are working together really well. And I really like how they're opposites, but also I like how it's not just Loki trolling Mobius the whole time, because Mobius is pretty sharp and really smart, and even though he's kind of like seems like he's kind of at the end of his rope and kind of a guy who's been stuck in his job for too long, he also seems to know what's going on with Loki emotionally on a pretty deep level.
Right.
And it's not only I mean it's because he is Loki, obviously, but they kind of have almost a father-son or big brother-younger brother relationship. The salad is not Mephisto, but it is.
There was an interesting thing I read about the Josta soda that Mobius is drinking, as well as the Boku juice that Loki takes and dumps on the salad. These were both shortly lived, discontinued food items that really did exist.
Yeah.
And I think it was suggested that like a lot of the foods that they're using in the TVA are these discontinued foods, which maybe might ask the question, did they go into failed timelines before they eradicated them and loaded up on these aberration foods that were existing in these timelines?
I didn't see any farmland. I didn't see a sun. I just saw a big city. Like they need to get their food from somewhere.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so they must be going in there and being like, this timeline's messed up, but let's get all this I was gonna surge.
Let's get a bunch of slice. Let's get a bunch of slice. Yeah. Tap. Now that makes sense. If it's like a clever background thing, that's brilliant. If it plays into something, because like that soda that he's drinking, wasn't it like didn't it come out in the 90s?
Yeah.
It was like a Pepsi thing.
And he's talking about how the jet skis also came about in the 90s.
Right.
And
it's just like the Matrix.
Me, Mobius loves the 90s, which is cool. Yeah.
Well, it's like in the Matrix, that was the 90s was the height of human civilization.
That is true. It was so true.
I mean, the 90s was the height of human civilization.
Yeah.
I gotta say.
It's been all downhill since then.
Yep.
There's a poster also in the break room that says the timeline won't wait for seconds. And, funny pun, but Will, you and I used to work together in our own little cubicle farm, and I just gotta say, fuck that shit. If I saw a poster like that, that is just demoralizing.
But also, we both used to eat our lunch in 15 minutes because we were paid hourly and we wanted to get out of there as soon as possible.
Yes, but I remember once walking to the exit door of our office to leave for the day, and there someone had put up a new little sign on there that said, the day might not have been good, but there's good in every day. And I was just like, who would put that there as a motivation poster? That's so awful.
Mephisto would.
Mephisto or the timekeepers, whoever these awful people are. So yeah, that makes me want to return to this topic. Are the timekeepers real? And are they evil? Clyde, what do you think? What do you think of the TVA or the timekeepers in particular?
I don't think the timekeepers are real. I think it is a Wizard of Oz-esque hoax, right? Pay no attention to this shroud over here that we're making up. That's why they're so busy. Nope, you can't see them. I didn't say you could see them. I don't think that they're real. I think there's something else going on. There's a machine behind the curtain. And it's this illusion to keep the TVA, whatever that is, kind of trucking along and doing its thing, rather than being three all-knowing, powerful beings who control the sacred timeline.
Will, what do you think?
I agree with Clyde. That's this, especially the scene where Mobius is meeting the Judge Ravana, I believe is the character's name. She just seems like she's hiding something when he's like, when am I going to get to meet these timekeepers? I mean, he's promising a meeting with the timekeepers to Loki, but he hasn't gotten one himself. And it sounds like he grew up in the TVA, or at least that's all he remembers. I definitely think that it's all something else is going on for sure.
Yeah, we see the statue of one of the timekeepers, which by the way, do you guys kind of get some like Doctor Doom vibes here? Like
Sure.
with this?
Yeah.
But we were talking last week about the idea that one of them in the animation, this particular character, looks kind of like King the Conqueror. It had a blue face with kind of the dome over top of the head, and Timekeeper King the Conqueror. There's a lot of suggestion. In fact, they've already cast the lead actor to play King in the MCU. The idea that he might be involved here as one of the timekeepers, I think is an interesting concept. But if it is all kind of smoke and mirrors and manipulation of people, and they don't really have the control that they're claiming, it will still, I think, require quite a bit of more exposition and explanation for us, the audience, for us to kind of get on board with whatever this is, whatever's going on here.
I think the TVA is such a great engine for storytelling. They can zap themselves anywhere in time in the world and then solve a case or a mystery. And then there's a mystery about them themselves. It's such a cool thing. So I think the TVA should continue in the MCU, either with another season of Loki or just popping up here and there as needed in other MCU properties. So I hope it stays. But what the origin of it is, the show is not showing all its cards yet.
No, I like the TVA as a, it's almost, and I'm getting vibes from all of the Marvel shows like this, but it's almost like if you said, hey, what would a Marvel version of The Office look like?
Yeah.
And let's do that. And it's kind of like, okay. So it's kind of fun. And I think that what Marvel and the MCU needs is a few more kind of comedic elements, not to I don't know how much you can depend the whole show on it, but I can imagine a reference here or there, in another Marvel show or Marvel movies to the TVA, especially that guy who's just getting like his juice box taken, and
Eugene Cordero.
Yes, he's just like he's kind of funny, and he reminds me of the guy in WandaVision who just was kind of the cop that was always trying to help, but always just
who else he remind you of, Clyde?
Who?
Rutherford from because that's his voice.
Rutherford, that's Rutherford. So it's Bill Boy. But it is that kind of silly comedy kind of that's nice to have. My wife struggles with some of the Marvel stuff because the fight scenes can be so long, and she's like, okay, these little bits of pieces of comedy to break up the drama and the action, I think are really needed. And so I hope they do continue.
Well, real quick before we move on, just want to mention Will Morris is comparing the TVA to the Adjustment Bureau, which is a Philip K. Dick novel, but it was also made into a great movie with Emily Blunt and Matt Damon. Mm-hmm. And very much like the TVA, but great movie. I just want to say, everybody watch the Adjustment Bureau. I think it's free on Hulu.
Speaking of this Will Morris guy, he also said this: I think the timekeepers were real, but have since been secretly eliminated by Ravana's boy toy. I don't know necessarily about that theory being, dead on, but I do think there was something interesting in Ravana mentioning that she had this other guy, this kind of what'd you call him, like an accountant or something like that?
An agent,
Auditor?
another agent.
Yeah, that it has proved like very valuable, but it's like this secret kind of aside. It reminded me of in WandaVision when Agent what's his name? Magic. Agent Magic. I forget the actor's name.
Yes.
He mentioned that he had a science buddy who's going to come help, and everyone's like, "Is it Reed Richards? Who is this?" And she's now dropped this other character and didn't really elaborate on who it is, and this is just rife for us to kind of speculate on who it is.
John Kelling says it's Agent Ralph Boner.
Well, I think it's interesting that we see at the very end she picks up the timekeeper sticky thing and disappears to somewhere, right? Now we see the other agents go through these portal doors, but we don't see her. So my question was, where the hell did she go?
Oh wait, did she ghost like into a different direction? I must have missed this scene.
When the shit was going down and everything was branching off at the end, didn't she grab a melty stick?
Yep.
And walked out of her office.
Yeah. Ran with purpose. She was moving with purpose.
What if she's actually one of the timekeepers, and one of her great tricks is claiming that other people over here are the timekeepers?
I can see that.
Yeah, I'm just a middleman, but she's actually the one who's running things, and it's easier to not be the person at the top when technically you actually are, because then people won't treat you that way.
Yeah, you don't have to sign autographs or answer emails. You just get to be the other guy or the other person. I see what you're going there, Grant.
We have a couple other scenes I wanted to discuss. One was the scene with Pompeii. They get this little chance to have this in aside, and they go to Pompeii. What'd you guys think? Will, what'd you think of that scene?
Okay, this is very nitpicky, but the critique I have for that scene is Loki's like, "Oh, I speak Italian." They're not speaking Italian, right? They're speaking Latin. And then that was all I could think about for the rest of that scene. Like, is he speaking Italian or Latin? And it just totally took me out of the whole thing. Done.
Clyde, what did you think of that scene?
One of my favorite scenes in the entire episode. I thought it was hilarious. Was it a great scene? I don't know if it was a great scene, but it was funny. I mean, it was one of those things where it was like, what is he going to do? Like, I was thinking the minute he was like, be easy, go light. I was like, of course he won't. And then when he said he let the goats free and said, be free, my horny little friends. I mean, I almost died laughing. And so everything he's dancing around and he's saying, you're all going to die. Like, to me, it was hilarious. For nothing other than just, I thought it was funny. I thought it was a great scene. And then I had to think of, this is a moment where we've all read about Pompeii in history books and talked about how people died so fast that they immediately turned to ash. They got to watch that. The only thing I had questions about was, how did they get out? Because the last thing we saw was it looked like Loki was dead. So I just kind of wanted to know, how did they get out? But other than that, I thought it was hilarious.
He has his magic, right? When they leave the TVA, so create a Loki bubble or whatever.
Oh, I thought that seemed to if both of them are Lokis.
Yes. I thought that scene was super funny. It was another example to show doing story and plot exposition. Like, we had to explain more about how the apocalypse thing works, and we can create all kinds of chaos and no variants will happen, right? They just had to illustrate that again. But they did it in a really fun, entertaining way. So if there's one thing this show knows how to do, is to deliver exposition in with really fun, goofy scenes that are super entertaining.
I like the comments talking about how the set looked cheap and reminded them of like a Doctor Who set.
This show, out of all of them, does feel like a TV show, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I know it looks great, but it doesn't have the end game budget. It it does feel like a TV show, but I don't mind that.
I mean, I think that when we see all the interiors of the building, there's times where it's tight and claustrophobic and dim. Right. The lights are all down, and so it's kind of hard to see. But there's other times where they'll open up, like with a big elevator scene and stuff like that, and that's kind of cool looking.
I think it's just that I've seen that elevator in so many movies.
Yeah,
it's like a Marriott in Atlanta, right?
Is that what it is? Okay.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're right, I guess.
But it looks amazing though.
This episode in particular also felt like a TV, like a classic TV show, because it's really following the whole like buddy cop kind of formula. It's something very familiar to us with any sort of duo that teams up to investigate something, and they start working together, which it felt. I would say that this episode was setting us up for it to be the formulaic structure that we might see for the next few episodes, until the very end when we see Loki make the decision to jump through the portal to follow Lady Loki. And that was an interesting turn for the character, because we don't know. What do you guys think? Do you have kind of an opinion on whether or not he's doing this in service to the TVA, in service to him getting to the bottom of this, in service to him just having an escape and maybe having a better collaborative partner than Mobius?
He wants to know, right? He wants to know what's he wants to get to the bottom of it for himself, but also
she has the answers.
What's that?
And she has the answers.
Yes, she has the answers, but also like the TVA is Loki's only anchor in the universe now, so I don't think he's going to completely abandon them.
Yeah, I kind of look at this and go, Loki isn't a character who is very loyal or has ever been. And so his motivations are always centered around his own objective, right? Now, he can be your buddy cop with Mobius as long as Mobius is pulling the strings to get so that Loki can get what he wants, which at this point up until now was this idea of an audience with the timekeepers. Now he's at a point where he's like, well, what's behind this door? What is, female Loki doing, right? And Lady Loki, what are they up to? And so he's like, all right, I've got to go, and I'm going to jump in. And the truth of the matter is, whoever offers Loki the best way to get what he wants, that's the side he's ultimately going to be on. And I don't think he's truly made that decision yet.
No, he loves the TVA.
Not going to happen.
Yeah, he doesn't know what he's going to do, but he's going to do anything that gives him the most freedom. I mean, staying with the TVA, he knew how that might play out. He gets vaporized. Like, I would have probably jumped through that door too, because at least, this is supposedly another version of me. Am I really going to let myself be vaporized? Like, she's probably going somewhere cool.
I mean, that's a good point. Like, with the TVA hasn't earned the loyalty of Loki. In fact, they've done most of their stuff under threat to him and under degradation, humiliation. Wear this variant jacket while we all laugh at you. I mean, he doesn't have any reason to have any loyalty to any of them, except maybe a degree of mutual respect between him and Mobius. So yeah, he had every motivation to jump through there and almost none to stick around with Mobius.
Well, it's not just Mobius. It's the female time cop who constantly thinks that he's about to do something underhanded. And in this situation, he did all the right things, but they're looking at him like he did all the wrong things. Mm-hmm. I completely understood why he jumped to that portal.
Sure.
Yeah. My last question for you guys is, what is Lady Loki doing? What's her plan here? It seems that she went and jumped into all these different timelines where she knew the TVA was going to show up, and she started assaulting them, attacking them, so that she could collect all of these different canisters. These canisters she then took into this one apocalyptic event and programmed them all to correspond to different locations that she seems to. I don't know how this works. It seems like she's timing them to drop into different locations and then break timelines all over the place for all of these to make it so that there's too many simultaneous events in too many different places that the TVA can't control to force the red line and force the fracturing of timelines. But what's the goal there?
Well,
Maybe she's trying to stop the end of the world, or the end of the universe, because
I almost said it. I didn't say it, Nicole.
what is her end game? Well, yeah, I think she's trying to stop the end game because Moby has told us that the timekeepers are locked away trying to figure out the ending, and once they figure it out, everything disappears, right? That it's going to be a lot harder to do if there's a million different variant time threads that Lady Loki caused. So maybe she's just trying to prolong that, make more work for them, because she doesn't want the world to end, because it's going to end soon.
Well, go ahead, Will.
I think she's got a plan. There's something she wants to accomplish, and she couldn't accomplish it unless the TVA was distracted. So she set off all those bombs to totally distract them, and then now she can do whatever she wanted to do before that she wasn't able to do.
See, I think that Lady Loki is the hero. And here's why. When you think of time, right, what we've always known is that there are all these mirror verses that splinter off based on decisions that you make, right? That is how in Star Trek we get the, Terran verse, the Terra mirror verse, right? It's like, what if something happened there? And if you've watched Sliders at all, there are a million possibilities. Well, here, what we've been told is that's bad. And what you need is one timeline and to keep that timeline holistic. Well, when she set off that bomb, all of a sudden it went back to what we as sci-fi nerds know is actually correct, right? Based on every other sci-fi franchise in the history of time, you've got these mirror verses. So my thought is what she's out to do is to restore the true nature of the timeline.
That makes a lot of sense, because if the timekeeper's job is to rein in all these variants and keep one clean timeline, what they're really doing is killing people, right? To make sure that the timeline doesn't spread. They're doing an odd form of sci-fi genocide, and that just spells bad, right? It spells bad guy. So yeah, maybe she's the good guy.
I like it.
Yeah, that's
and not to mention the images of the timekeepers. Man, there's nothing heroic about those cats.
They sus.
They're very sus.
Yeah, so I think that's what we're now going to be keeping an eye on. Are we seeing more and more evidence that the TVA is this weirdly fascist controlling entity that's trying to eliminate the possibility of these multiple timelines where maybe it's not evil. maybe this is evidence that the timekeepers are the villains. And I wonder if what we just saw happen is the impetus for Doctor Strange into the multiverse of madness and subsequent events that are going to occur. I mean, it wouldn't necessarily mean that Doctor Strange has to reference Doctor Strange 2 has to reference the events of the TVA. It's just now the multiverse is back and flourishing as of this episode, and with that come a new host of problems that Doctor Strange will have to address in protecting the sanctums on Earth. Maybe,
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think that's what we're looking at. Yeah.
Could be interesting, guys. This could have some great ramifications here. Any closing thoughts from you guys before we wrap things up here? Closing thoughts on episode 2, Mike.
I'm super pumped to see more a deeper side of Lady Loki. I want to see what this character is all about, and not just to find out like who she is. Like, is she this other character, like the sorceress or the enchantress? Sure, I don't care. I just want to know more about the character because they hired a really great actor to play the character, and it's going to mean something to Loki, right? So I want to just explore that character more. And it seems like a character they're setting up to continue on in the MCU. So, yeah, more of that character.
Yeah. Clyde, what are your closing thoughts on this?
I think there's a lot more to come. We're in episode 2, so we're just scratching the surface. But something that Will Morris said in the chat earlier was that you don't bring in Gugu for this little bitty role. Like, that's a waste of money. And talent. And so there's a lot more to come that we haven't even seen a glimpse of. So I'm excited. I'm tuning in on Wednesday to check this out again.
Interesting. It's kind of like when we saw Catherine Hahn pop up and we're like, no, she's not simply just the neighbor, guys. Nope. No, that's not a chance. Will, what about you?
Yeah, I'm excited to see where this goes. I'm hoping for lots of timeline shenanigans and confusing reveals. And, I just want generally it to be weird. And I hope it doesn't end in a big disappointing superhero fight.
Yeah.
One of the things I keep thinking back to now that we know that this TVA has been operating in the shadows, we don't know really for how long, but it exists and it's doing this right now. I think back to the events of Infinity War when Doctor Strange is like, hey, I'm going to sift through all the possible future timelines to figure out what might be our course of action with Thanos. And so he's meditating and jumping through them. How does that work if those timelines can't splinter off because the TVA exists? What was he sifting through? Because I always imagined he was able to kind of envision jumping through different multiverse timelines, and that's what was going on there. Which, if that is the case, then maybe the TVA has only existed since after that point. And we're looking at this TVA that is up and running, but is actually really fresh. And all these people they have this like faux memory of how long they've been operating, or I don't know.
Yeah, a mysterious entity that's all about controlling everything. That's us.
Yeah.
Very.
I grabbed a few closing thoughts from our audience here. Idlon says, I'm not sure alternate timelines are the same as alternate dimensions. Alternate dimensions already exist, with the dark dimension in Strange. Contradicts the sacred timeline shown in Loki. Okay. Nicole Jackson says, I hope this show gets more interesting. Oh, no. I'm sorry. It's not jiving for you. Will Morris says, closing thoughts, a midweek MCU pod. Feels like it would have a lonely chat. Aw.
We'll have to find out.
This on the midweek?
We'll find out.
Well, we'll give it a shot. If no one tunes in on Wednesday, we will redo our exact same show back on Friday again.
Just run the replay.
I hope you guys are able to kind of pop in and join us. Rich Murphy says, I'm just here for the ride. I got nothing. Yeah, man. We're glad to have you all here for the ride. I think we're going to go ahead and wrap things up here, though. I want to say thank you so much to all of you viewers for joining us. Thank you, Will, for joining us. And Will, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter or Instagram at William Cardini.
All right. Clyde, how about you? Where can people find you?
Well, as always, you can find me at Clyde Haynes on Twitter. And you can also find me at www.keyandclyde.com. And you can find me on our periodic off-season Star Trek Discovery Pod. And if you're a Patreon subscriber, you can find me in the Slack.
Yeah, there you go. And thank you for joining us. Mike, where can people find you?
Find me at Mike Moody Garcia on Twitter, tweeting about MCU, tweeting about Star Trek. Let's go.
Yeah, you can find me at Baron Von Grant if you want to find me. Otherwise, I'm here. I'm at MCU Pod. Appreciate all of you guys helping support us over at patreon.com/MCU Pod. And, appreciate all the engagement on the live episodes. It was a lot of fun chatting with you about this show. I'm excited to continue next week. We'll give the experiment of shifting our day to talking on Wednesday. And I know we'll at least see Nicole Jackson there. Yes. Hope the rest of you guys can join us. Once again, that's going to be Wednesday at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time right here on youtube.com/MCU Pod. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And we appreciate all of you guys. We'll be back next week talking about episode 3 of Loki. And until then... Here's the real outro.